A lion, a Teranga lion, has roared for one final time. Today, on October 2nd, really out of the blue, out of nowhere, the Senegalese Football Federation announced that Aliou Cisse, their coach that has been in charge for nearly a decade now, his contract has not been renewed and that they will be moving on. We're going to talk all about what that means, just coming up next in an emergency reaction video. Hello and welcome to the African Five-A-Side podcast. As always, my name is Meher Mazahi. As always, this is brought to you by africasacountry.com. Usually we upload, after the weekend. We do African football roundups, but I kind of had to speak about what happened today, what was announced today. The Senegalese Football Federation announced that they're not going to be renewing the contract of one Aliou Cisse. It's a shocking move. It really sent shockwaves throughout the continent. And I think all of us immediately started thinking, was this the right decision? What is Aliou Cisse's legacy? And what does this mean for Senegal going forward? So I'm going to just try to make a short video talking about all of that. I hope it's going to be short. Um, so when we're judging a coach, we could do it various different ways. I think the easiest, quickest way is just look at the record. Aliou Cisse was in charge of the Senegalese Teranga Lions for 107 matches. Out of those 107 matches, 70 victories, 24 draws, and just 13 losses. That's an incredible record at any level. But, at the very highest level in African football, it's very difficult to get a record like that. I think even though Jamal Belmadi, Algeria's coach that was fired recently, I think had only 6 losses in 60 matches. So it might have been even slightly better, although he played less high-level matches, in the World Cup and so on and so forth. But I thought the Algerian Federation was right to fire him. So does that necessarily mean that the record means anything? I think we can also judge coaches on their AFCONs. Aliou Cisse got to 2 finals of the 4 AFCONs he was in charge of. He won the first AFCON in Senegalese history. But I think with his generation of players, I think he was perhaps expected to at least get one. World Cups, he qualified to every World Cup that he was in charge of. That he could have possibly qualified for, but 2018 I thought was they were a little bit unlucky to go out. 2022 was a little bit underwhelming, but Sadio Mane, remember, was injured prior to the World Cup, so there were mitigating factors there. So it's difficult to judge him there. I think if you look at the record of, total matches, AFCONs, World Cups, you come to the conclusion that this was a very good coach, but not exceptional. Exceptional would have been winning maybe one more AFCON, maybe going a little bit further in the World Cup. Although we can't say anything about his, overall record of, winning 70 matches in 107. That's incredible. But limiting Aliou Cisse to just his record, I think, is unfair to him. I think we sort of have to look at him with a more holistic image. Um, this is, in my opinion, the son of Senegal. He is Senegal incarnate. He is Africa. He was, the captain of the squad at the 2002 World Cup when they shocked the world. And despite some of the failures that he had in his career, he missed a very important penalty in a shootout against Cameroon in an AFCON final. He's always been beloved in Senegal. And you kind of have to, again, like we talked about Motsepe last episode, where were we when he came in? Senegal at the 2015 AFCON eliminated in the group stages. And Alan Giresse, their coach, I remember this, I think it's the rest of my life. In the final post-match press conference, Senegalese journalists, and for those of you that don't know, they travel in numbers. They come to AFCONs with more than 100 journalists. They all sleep in the same hotels. They all practically wear the same clothes. They're a force to be reckoned with. And they ask him to his face, "Are you going to resign? Are you going to resign? Are you going to resign?" And he kept refusing to answer. It was a very poisonous, toxic atmosphere around the Senegalese national team. Um, and Aliou Cisse, in the meantime, is working in the background. Senegal make it to the 2012 Summer Olympic Games. And there's that golden generation that's sort of growing with him. Sadio Mane, Idrissa Gueye, Cheikhou Kouyaté, Saliou Ciss, players that would become integral parts of the Senegalese national team. And so when he takes over for Giresse, I think we it's difficult to judge him at first. He gets Senegal to the AFCON. And me, my first AFCON, and the first time I get to judge him is the 2017 AFCON. Now, maybe people don't remember, but Senegal were probably the most impressive side at the 2017 African Cup of Nations in Gabon, especially during the group stages. They were playing really great, free-flowing, attacking football. Um, and I didn't really get to watch them too much in the group stages. I was in Franceville, where Algeria was playing in a group with Zimbabwe, Tunisia, and I forget the final team. Um, but still, I had my eye on them, and I was really keen to watch them in person. I got to do that for the quarterfinal match against Cameroon. And they lose that match to Cameroon. They couldn't break down that Cameroon side, and it goes to penalty shots. And the final penalty goes to Sadio Mane. It's not the Sadio Mane of Liverpool yet, but he's still probably the best player on the team. And Mane misses his penalty, and he just collapses into tears. And I had never seen Sadio Mane like that before. And it made me actually gave me long-term doubts about Sadio Mane. I started to think maybe he doesn't have, the mentality to become a huge player. And of course, I was very, very wrong about that. But what I saw in the immediate aftermath, the immediate reaction after the whistle was Cisse go and console Mane, and then they went to go to the fans, and I just saw the spirit of communion, the spirit of togetherness between fans, players, journalists. They were all like sad, but very, you could tell, proud to be united. You could tell there was belief for the future. And for me to see that in person live, and I could have only seen it in person and live, really, you couldn't see that on TV. But for me to get that image in my mind just 2 years after that Ellen Giras press conference, um, immediately almost I believed in the leadership qualities of Aliou Cisse. And I learned more about him, especially during the 2021 AFCON as I started writing about Senegal, as it was quite clear that they were probably going to win it. And when you look into his background, you kind of understand where his leadership comes from. He's of a noble family in the Ziguinchor region in southern Senegal. His family, they have a lot of like spiritual leaders. His grandfather in particular was a huge, chief, and he often goes back to his grandfather's grave and he, prays there and he cries there. And he has respect for the past. This is why I say like he's kind of Senegal incarnate. They have that culture of, honoring, spiritual leaders, and he does that all the time. And he himself, you could tell he's a leader because he knows how to respect leaders. And he gets that respect because he gives that respect in a sense. In Europe they have that political theory, Machiavelli, that fear is a better leadership tool than love, right? But I think Cisse was the almost the exact opposite of that. I think players didn't fear him, but they respected him and they loved him. Everybody did. I think even to this day, even if you had Senegalese supporters that didn't want him to be his contract to be renewed, I think everybody still respects and loves Aliou Cisse. He had that as a player, and of course, he had it as a coach. I remember speaking to Alassane Ndour, one of his teammates in 2002, and he said, Aliou Cisse is the incarnation of leadership. Leadership is him. And this is a quote from one of my articles. He said, now looking back, it was obvious that he had the qualities to be a great coach. He knows how to speak to the players and galvanize them. Although he is withdrawn and introverted, when the match starts, he is transformed and is animated. Yeah. And it was clear really throughout, his time as a coach that his teammates were at his side. You could see El Hadj Diouf, you could see Kalilou Fadiga. So many people, advocated for him to be the coach after Alan Giras, and they were with him, really until the end. And I think that added to the unity of everything. And you could see in 2019 they get to the final and they lose to Algeria. And again, they were the best side in that tournament except for perhaps Algeria, and they were just unfortunate to fall with Algeria in the group stage and in the final. But after the 2019, I had questions about a mental block for Senegal because they had never won any trophy at any level since independence. And in 2021, they come back. Excuse me. At 2021, they come back. Papa Bouba Diop had passed away a few months before, and again that spirit of unity and collective quality they had on the pitch as well. Those are the sort of, I talk a lot about intangibles. Those are the intangibles that he sort of gave the Senegalese national team. And for them to get that win in 2021 was absolutely massive, not just for football, but for the entire country. Um, you could see that as soon as they won the AFCON, they started winning trophies at every single age category in almost all tournaments, Chan, U20, U17, beach soccer, and so on and so forth. And ultimately, that is going to be his legacy, is February 2022, actually, for the 2021 AFCON, when they brought the trophy home to Senegal and the country celebrated like never before. That triumph right there was really his defining legacy. Just very quickly, because we're going to wrap it up. This is not a full podcast, but um, if you think about his AFCON record, I said he got to two finals out of the four, but if you look every single time he was eliminated, so the other three times, they lose to the eventual champions: 2017 Cameroon, 2019 Algeria, 2023 Ivory Coast in the quarterfinals every time. So overall, I think he's been a great coach, but I think we would also be naive to not talk about perhaps some of the criticism. I think many Senegalese football supporters and people within the federation felt like he was a tactically limited coach, that he could get the best out of his players. He was a good man manager, and that works in tournament football. But when he had to, step up and play some of the best nations, in a World Cup, for example, then his tactical limitations showed, and he couldn't take Senegal to the next level. My question is, why make this change now? You could have made it prior to AFCON qualifying or World Cup qualifying. Why now? It's a little bit of weird timing, number one. And number two, um, are you going to bring somebody that's better than him? Are you going to bring in a huge name? Because Aliou Cisse throughout, his contract was never making more than 30,000 US dollars a month. Senegal doesn't have the kind of budget to bring in a world-class tactician. I don't think they do. Perhaps they do. But apparently there was a rift between the Senegalese Federation and the Ministry of Sport. People in the Ministry of Sport wanted him gone, perhaps bring in a new coach, and people at the Federation wanted to keep him. Ultimately, the rift they couldn't come to a compromise, and Aliou Cisse is no longer the coach of Senegal. So it's just a quick one. I'm going to wrap it up here. Perhaps we could talk about this more later, but I just wanted to give my quick thoughts on Aliou Cisse's, not really his sacking, but the refusal of the Senegalese Federation to no longer renew his contract. As always, if you like this, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. Give it this podcast a 5-star rating on the audio platforms, and we'll be speaking to you very, very soon. Peace.